On the evening of June 1st, 2015, a catastrophic maritime disaster unfolded on China's Yangtze River when the cruise ship MV Dongfang capsized during severe weather conditions near Jingzhou. The vessel, carrying 454 passengers and crew members, succumbed to powerful winds and heavy rain, resulting in one of China's deadliest peacetime maritime disasters. As elderly tourists slept in their cabins, a sudden storm system struck the ship, leading to its rapid capsizing in waters approximately 49 feet deep. The incident not only devastated hundreds of families, but also became a pivotal moment in Chinese maritime history, prompting significant changes in river cruise safety regulations. For Maritime Mishaps, this is the story of the Dongfang Xing. The watercraft and popular Chinese cruise liner MV Dongfang Xing completed construction in February 1994. A modification project in 1997 extended the vessel's hull by 36 feet, resulting in final dimensions of 249 feet in length and 46 feet across the beam. The vessel underwent additional modifications in 2008 when renovations decreased its maximum passenger load from 584 to 534 individuals. As of 2015, the vessel measured 3,900 tons in gross tonnage and displaced 2,200 tons of water. Its engines propelled it at 6 knots, or about 7 miles per hour, while a staff of 46 personnel managed its operations. The Chongqing Eastern Shipping Corporation held ownership of this vessel, while a different travel agency handled its operational management. The ship primarily navigated through China's inland waterways, specifically the Three Gorges section of the Yangtze River. This stretch of water wound through a subtropical monsoon region, where a sequence of 3 dramatic gorges created spectacular vistas. Chinese authorities enhanced their scrutiny of riverborne tourism vessels like the Dongfang Xing as the nation's tourism sector expanded. Maritime officials in Nanjing identified safety concerns with the vessel and 5 other ships during a 2013 inspection. The ownership company, Chongqing Eastern Shipping Corporation, maintained silence regarding the details of these documented safety issues. It's why it came as a surprise to absolutely no one when doom reared its dark and deadly head just a couple of years later. The evening of June 1st, 2015 brought catastrophe when the Dongfang Xing sank in the Yangtze River near Jingzhou at 9:30 p.m. during its 930-mile voyage between Nanjing and Chongqing. The vessel's senior staff, both captain and chief engineer, testified that a tornado had struck their ship. Weather officials at the China Meteorological Administration documented an EF1 tornado in the neighboring county, generating winds between 86 and 110 miles per hour. Subsequent analysis revealed that this tornado passed about 5 miles from the vessel's location. Weather radar later indicated that a powerful downburst, exhibiting winds exceeding 73 miles per hour, had emerged from the storm system and likely triggered the ship's capsizing in waters approximately 49 feet deep. Relief operations launched promptly and intensified throughout the following 12 hours. The death toll reached 82 by June 4th, with some victims' remains discovered 31 miles downstream from the incident site. Among the 14 individuals who survived were the vessel's captain and engineer. According to China's Central Television, or CCTV, rescue teams detected voices calling from within the overturned hull. A massive response followed, with the Hubei Armed Police Corps deploying nearly 1,000 personnel and 40 inflatable craft. The complete rescue force grew to 3,000 workers and 50 vessels, utilizing diving equipment and specialized cutting tools to breach the upturned hull. The quest for survivors stretched 140 miles downstream. Authorities at the Three Gorges Dam assisted by halving their water release, lowering river levels to aid rescue work. By June 5th, workers secured the vessel with cables and netting, then sealed breaches in the hull to prepare for righting operations. As the recovery mission yielded only casualties, searchers still extended their range beyond 600 miles downstream. The nation's top leadership mobilized to address the crisis. The General Security of China and the Premier at the time directed the emergency response, while the Premier, the Vice Premier, and the State Councilor traveled to inspect the disaster zone and supervise rescue activities. The manifest of the Dongfang Xing listed 456 individuals aboard during the fateful journey, revised from an initial count of 458. The passengers numbered 405, consisting mainly of senior Chinese citizens, accompanied by 46 crew members and 5 tourism staff. Crew members who lived through the disaster described how their vessel succumbed rapidly to an unexpected squall line while passengers slept. One surviving witness described how rising waters and a severe tilt beyond 45 degrees preceded the final moments before capsizing. A small group of 7 survivors reached the shoreline and notified emergency services approximately 150 minutes after the catastrophe. The final toll, released on June 13th, revealed that of 454 souls aboard, 442 perished, while 12 escaped with their lives. The initial alert came from a middle-aged male passenger who shared his cabin with his spouse. Upon feeling the vessel's instability, the man attempted to reassure his wife by holding her hand. As water breached their quarters during the severe list, she implored him to save himself. Following her plea, the passenger escaped through a cabin window, forced to abandon his wife. The catastrophe devastated entire families, including another middle-aged man, age 57, who endured the loss of 5 siblings. They had embarked on what should have been an 11-day pleasure cruise with 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Mere hours before the disaster, they transmitted joyful photographs to relatives at home. None of the 5 siblings survived. The captain of the ship also weathered harsh public condemnation for his escape without initiating passenger evacuation procedures. Later revelations about the death of his wife, Mo Bing, the vessel's passenger services director, whom he had wed 3 years earlier following a previous marriage, partially tempered public hostility as his personal tragedy emerged. A bereaved mother's online testimony revealed her triple loss, both of her parents and a 3-year-old daughter, the vessel's youngest passenger. Recovery teams later discovered the remains of a young girl, believed to be this very child. The catastrophe claimed 97.4% of all passengers. June 7th marked a poignant tribute as over 500 emergency responders and officials observed 3 minutes of silence at the disaster site. This 7th day held particular significance in Chinese mourning traditions. Television networks across China demonstrated national solidarity by suspending entertainment broadcasts in the 2 days following the disaster. Weather officials had broadcast alerts about dangerous conditions in the vicinity of the Dongfang Xing's route, with directives to inform all watercraft to implement safety protocols. The question of whether these critical warnings reached the Dongfang Xing remained unresolved, though documentation showed at least one other vessel in the area had acted upon the alert by taking defensive measures. In the aftermath, authorities detained both the surviving captain and chief engineer for investigative purposes. The Chinese leadership implemented controls over media reporting and public discourse regarding the tragedy. Members of the Politburo Standing Committee worked to shape public perception of the government's crisis response, balancing their message between showing compassion for bereaved families and preserving societal stability. The government's conclusive investigation, published December 30th, 2015, attributed the vessel's demise to the extreme weather event. The report also highlighted operational deficiencies within both the maritime company and regulatory bodies. Based on these findings, the investigation proposed disciplinary proceedings against 43 individuals. However, that wasn't enough to assuage suspicions of common folk that something more sinister might be behind the disaster. Maritime regulations mandated that vessels like the Dongfang Xing carry two crucial safety devices, a black box and an automatic distress beacon to notify nearby ships during emergencies. The Yangtze River Maritime Administration later disclosed that the vessel lacked the required emergency beacon system, which prevented automatic distress signals from reaching other vessels during the catastrophe. The first notification of the disaster reached Chinese officials only after a male survivor, rescued by local fishermen, provided his account of the sinking. Recovery teams combing through the salvage vessel failed to locate the mandatory black box recorder as well. This critical absence hampered investigators, who then relied on three primary sources: examination of the damaged vessel, testimony from the 14 survivors, including the vessel's senior officers, and scrutiny of the operating company's practices. These limited information sources sparked debates about the possibility of establishing a comprehensive and accurate understanding of the event's causes. By June 6th, after thorough examination of the wreckage, officials provided updated statistics. Among 456 individuals on board, 14 had survived, 406 were confirmed deceased, and 36 remained unallocated. While search teams expanded their search efforts along the Yangtze downstream waters, the unusually high number of missing persons raised questions. The presumed death toll stood at 442, with more than 8% of passengers, or the 36 individuals, still unaccounted for despite extensive recovery operations. Historical data from similar maritime disasters suggested that rapid vessel sinkings, even during nighttime hours with passengers confined below deck, typically yielded higher body recovery rates. The 1993 passenger ferry incident in Korea demonstrated this pattern, with recovery teams locating all missing victims within 17 days, maintaining the unrecovered rate below 3%. The accelerated timeline of recovery operations at the Dongfang Xing wreckage site generated substantial debate. Chinese emergency teams initiated hull penetration and underwater exploration merely 72 hours after the sinking, commencing on June 3rd. The vessel underwent uprighting procedures on June 5th, and teams conducted their final inspection on June 6th, marking the end of primary recovery work just 5 days post-disaster. This expedited approach faced opposition from those concerned that hasty hull breaching might have compromised potential survival spaces within the vessel. Government representatives defended their methods, asserting careful consideration of preserving possible air pockets during hull penetration. Skeptics questioned the feasibility of such precise control, particularly given the possibility of finding survivors. Officials countered these concerns by citing the rarity of sustainable air pockets and comparable passenger vessel accidents, suggesting their rapid response aligned with practical considerations. The technical challenges of righting and recovering the hull sparked additional controversy regarding both survivor possibilities and corpse preservation. Critics highlighted risks of internal structural shifting damaging trapped bodies, while questioning the ethical implications of such rapid intervention. Officials proceeded with their accelerated timeline nonetheless, citing minimal survival prospects and the advantages of swift completion. A Renmin University scholar and acclaimed professor offered context for the government's approach, suggesting that prolonged recovery efforts risked elevating the incident to international prominence. His analysis indicated that officials prioritized rapid resolution to minimize sustained public attention, provided standard investigative protocols were followed. The government's management extended beyond physical recovery efforts to encompass strict access limitations and media restrictions throughout the investigation period. Officials prevented victims' families from approaching the site, even during potentially controversial operations like hull cutting. This policy remained in effect despite the possibility that such activities might have affected any remaining survivors. Access restrictions proved so comprehensive that even emergency personnel encountered difficulties reaching the site. Media coverage relied exclusively on official Xinhua news agency reports and state broadcaster CCTV footage, as independent access remained prohibited. International journalists faced identical restrictions, prompting further criticism. Despite the Prime Minister's June 4th directive to grant foreign press access, operational restrictions appeared unchanged. The government's tight control extended to survivor interviews and family communications, intensifying concerns about information transparency. In terms of overall naval disasters in China, including both military conflicts and peacetime events, only the steamer Taiping's January 1949 sinking, which claimed over 1,500 lives, surpassed this tragedy's death toll. Among Chinese maritime catastrophes during periods of peace, the Dongfang Doom incident claimed more lives than any other. May this sinking remain atop the record books, never to be experienced at such a magnitude ever again.